All right. Well, we're glad to be here with our inaugural edition of Word with the Herd. Philip Hutcheson, Athletic Director at Lipscomb University, and I've got a special guest with me, Coach Lennie Acuff, head men's basketball coach for Lipscomb. This is something we have been talking about around the office, just maybe trying to get everybody a fix of sports in our COVID-19 environment right now. So I hope everybody's doing well, whether you're a Lipscomb fan or not. Hope you're having a great week, and we'll be doing this every Wednesday, and hopefully just a way to get to know our coaches and our programs. And we've got, one of the great things is we have a lot of coaches who have a ton of experience, and so even if you're not a big Lipscomb fan, maybe you just want to learn more about some of the sports we're talking about, I think you'll have a great experience. So we're going to aim for about 45, 50 minutes. That's because I read a book not long ago called Younger Next Year, and it encouraged people to do 45 minutes of some kind of exercise every day. And so if you're not watching this later on, you've got your headphones in and you're walking in the neighborhood or jogging or whatever, hopefully we'll get you through at least one workout here. So, Coach, it's great to see you here. And, I guess I'm looking at my watch. March 12th was when the NCAA announced that it was not going to have spring championships. And I think since then, everybody's world has just kind of turned upside down. So I've got a ton of questions, by the way. Thanks to all of our people out there who sent them in. And I'll go ahead and make a quick reminder on that. If you want to send in a question for future weeks, you can email it to athletics@lipscomb.edu, or you can just direct message us on any of our social media feeds. And that would be on just Lipscomb Bisons on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. And if you'll do that, then we'll get those questions in. And quite frankly, I don't have a lot of work to do because we've got so many questions. But a month ago, Coach, we had things cooking along somewhat as usual. We knew some things might be coming. NCAA drops the bomb, and what's your life been like since then?
Wow, I think for all of us, just unprecedented, uncharted waters. My reference point is we played Liberty on Sunday and drove back that night, bus back to Nashville, got back in, and we started meeting again on Tuesday with our guys, starting to do exit interviews. I actually went down on Wednesday to see my son Will play baseball, and I'm really thankful I did. I was kind of on the fence, should I go, should I not go? Yeah. And I'm really thankful I made the time to go, because very little did I know when I was sitting there watching him, it would be the last time I saw him play this year. And so I have a real personal experience with it. I know a lot of parents have struggled as you've had kids have activities canceled and all that. And his baseball team he plays at the University of Alabama in Huntsville, and they were 12th in the country. They'd won 10 in a row, and their team was doing great and really looked like they're on their way to a fantastic season. And just boom, it was over. Drove back that night, and again, my reference point was the SEC tournament. We were going to go to the SEC tournament on Thursday, Kelly and I, to watch some of the games. And they canceled the tournament. And the Wednesday night prior to that, before Thursday, was when they started canceling NBA stuff. And you started kind of looking at this, saying, this seems different. Mm-hmm. And obviously it has been. The irony to it is we thought that night, that week, was like something we'd never seen before, that we were probably on a scale of 1 to 100. We were at 1. And we're at 100 now. I don't think anyone could have ever imagined this is where we've ended up. But here we are.
Yeah, you've coached, so you've been coaching for about 30 years, or give or take just a little bit there. As you said, at UAH, well, people may not know that. A lot of people do, but you were at UAH for a number of years before you came to Lipscomb, and then coached a little bit before that as well. But so you've been through some other big events. Probably the most notable one, I guess, would probably be 9/11, I suppose. I'm sure there've been a lot of more localized events or whatever, but it seems to me, I don't know about you, it just seems to me I'm not even sure that one hardly compares to what we're experiencing right now from a sports perspective.
Right. Yeah, 32 years from me, Hutch. 30 as a head coach, 2 as an assistant. This was year 30. So seen a lot, and obviously played 4 years in high school. And it's just, for where we are now from a sports perspective, I think I heard today on the radio, 32 days without sports. And I always think about the night after the baseball all-star game.
Yeah, yeah.
It's the one night all year we don't have some type of sports. And actually, they played the AAA All-Star game that night, so people will watch it. If they would put that AAA All-Star game on that TV tonight, it would be the all-time bonanza rating. So we could see something live sports. But yeah, we've at 9/11. I think probably rocked our world, but it was a boom. I thought 10 days that we were completely out of sorts, and then we started kind of getting back to going. I remember even that just took one weekend off from sports, and it seemed like an eternity. And so, and you and I have had several conversations. It really, really lets you know how our lives do revolve around sports, particularly. And there's nothing wrong with that, as long as we don't make it our idol. Is that, that's just what we do for a living. It's the world you and I grew up in, and we have children that's what they do. And so it has really knocked everyone for a loop, for sure. Me at the front of the line.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I'm going to get into, like I said, I've got a lot of questions from just different fans and people who have direct messaged us via one of our social media feeds, or have emailed us or texted or whatever. So I'm going to get into a lot of that. I really don't have a lot of work to do today, because I'm just going to kind of serve them up as I got them. But I want to make sure and get this one in, because it might have been one of our youngest fans and followers who said, "Hey, Coach, I'm stuck at home all day now. I can't go anywhere. Have a basketball goal and a ball, but that's it. I'm a middle schooler." What would you say? You've been coaching for 32 years. I mean, what should I be working on at home as a middle schooler right now, as to try to get better?
Well, what an awesome question. The first thing is, it's awesome that he or she cares enough to ask.
Yeah.
That shows some maturity there. But I've shared with my children, there a lot of young people now are seeing the way you and I grew up.
Mm-hmm.
Now they probably are a little more restrictive, and they're probably relegated to their homes. But when you and I grew up, there was no summer sports. There was, baseball maybe, but there was no AAU basketball. There was no internet. There were no phones. There were no Xbox, all that type stuff. I think we had maybe a video game you could play in your hand, but I didn't have one of them. And so you just had to figure it out. And I think that's always been the question, is what has always attracted me to basketball. You don't need but you and a ball. That's it. And you have a chance to get a lot better. And if you have a goal, you're really blessed. Yeah. And you're way beyond the curve if you have that. So, just to make a commitment that every day I'm going to be out there and I'm going to be purposeful and I'm going to work on things. I mean, there's so many great things on YouTube. You could go through so many workouts just from like I say, the advantage of having the internet now. Okay, I want to watch this workout, and I'm going to go try to do that. And I do think, and we've kind of challenged our guys, we do once a week Zoom calls, and it's like this, we have a chance to separate ourselves. That young person or young little boy, young little girl, they have a chance to be different now, and they have a chance to gain an edge. And so it's a great opportunity for them, but just be creative, and that's how you fall in love with it.
Yeah. Well, that's a great answer, and sure we'll get a few more of those. I want to go back to talk a little bit about just the program in general right now. And so, you came into this job, you were no rookie at it. I mean, it wasn't your first job, or you didn't have, one like you had no expectations or anything like that of what it might be like. But just kind of how did you kind of compare it a little bit to your experience at Huntsville? Again, a lot of people know 500 plus wins at Alabama Huntsville, multiple trips to the national tournament, great teams, pro players coming out of your program, that sort of thing. But maybe compare and contrast a little bit just the journey from last year to this year, and how it is similar and different.
Yeah, great question. I think first off, my initial response is just how kind everyone has been to Kelly and I and my family. The Lipscomb community is a special community, and I hope anyone that listens to this know that we are very grateful for the way we have been received. And it's really, I've taken 3 jobs. This was my 4th, and this was really the job I've taken where they had unprecedented success. When jobs open, they're usually because there hasn't been a winning tradition, culture, success, or like in this situation, there was a high water mark for the program. So that was new for me. And it was challenging. I would be being dishonest if I said it wasn't. They obviously lost a ton of great players, and not just great players off the previous team, those guys were awesome young men. I mean, I've gotten to know them and being around them some the first month I was on the job, and just seeing how they carried themselves and the pride they took in Lipscomb basketball. There was no secret to why they were so successful. I mean, they had Casey and his staff did a great job, and they had really good players. And so, but we were challenged with basically kind of reinventing ourselves. And then you're also reinventing, and I've had to do that before at Huntsville, but you have equity with the players. You have a relationship with the younger guys, and you know kind of what you have and okay, these are our challenges. These are our deficiencies. Let's go to work on that right now. And I had to jump, and our staff had to jump feet first into, okay, we don't know anything. And we were just trying to accumulate as much information, as intel as we could. And so that was a challenge. And, and anyone is being dishonest if they say that once you get to winning, it becomes a drug. I mean, you really like it. It is something you get used to. And it had been a long time since we'd had a season that we hadn't had success. And so, we can talk about all that stuff later, how we kind of got to where we ended up. But there were times it was hard. But I think kind of going back to my initial point was just the kindness, the quality of people at Lipscomb, and really, and I'm so very thankful to people that support our program, but just to walk in the office every day with all the support staff and just their character and integrity and their genuineness. I think that's probably the word I'm looking for, that, hey, we're with you, and we know it's going to be tough, but we really are here to support you, and we want to see you succeed.
So is there anything that you can think of? I mean, that's a lot of positive stuff, which is great. Is there anything that you just look back now, here you are a year-ish into it, I mean, almost.
Yep.
And so is there anything that you just say, wow, that took a little longer than I thought, that was a little harder than I thought? It could be basketball, could be just, other stuff related to the move
I think the first thing was probably not appreciating how much equity we had in our system at Huntsville. Our kind of overriding philosophy was maybe a little bit like when Coach Meyer was here, when you played, we redshirted guys. And so that was almost your year sabbatical. That's where you took a year to get integrated into the program and the culture. So when you started playing as a redshirt freshman, you had a running start at it. And then when we started implementing offense, defense, drills, whatever, you just told that guy to go to the back of the line.
Right.
And just watch the first three guys do it. And there's no greater way to learn than seeing it demonstrated properly. But there was no front or back of the line. We were all doing it for the first time. And so to get those guys to probably appreciating how long it takes to truly get it the way you want it. And we were really proud of our guys and how much improvement we made, but we're still a long way away from where I want us to be and what we're going to work every day to get to.
Yeah. I had somebody who asked us, so this is a little bit more of a quick hitter, I guess. But do you have, so you did, we did start out as a team, played a tough schedule early on. You didn't have anything to do with the schedule, by the way. You just inherited it. Right. So I want to get back to scheduling in just a second. But any of those places that you played this year just stand out particularly as like, man, that was a great environment, or that was this is a question from one of our followers, that was a great environment, or that was a tough place to play, or anything like that?
Yeah, I think our schedule was very difficult. It was unique in that we just kind of inherited the schedule, and they had been so good the last few years. It forces you at the mid-major level to have to play a tough schedule. I think the unique experiences we had going to the Naval Academy was something I'd always wanted to do. That was a neat thing, and that was our first Division I win. That was my first Division I win as a head coach, and that night we played without Buck, Greg Jones, and Jake Wolf. We didn't have any of those three guys. And we went up there and won 2 days later at Tennessee Tech. So the Navy trip will be special for that. Xavier, I think playing there where that's big time basketball. An NBA type arena that was full in the middle of football season on a rainy Saturday. You see the passion they had, and just it was done in a first-class way and to play in front of 9,500 people. And we played without those three guys, and we're fairly competitive for most of the game. I think a really unique place, lastly, was going to Vermont. Not really understanding what it's like to go into the Northeast and play in a really unique building, but just seeing they opened the doors an hour before the game, and it's just like they just started coming in droves.
Right.
And the pride they had in their program, and that was a really neat thing. That's what we want to get to at Lipscomb. And I just saw the difference their crowd made in the game. Like, we got off to a pretty good start, and they just brought so much energy. And I thought they had great basketball understanding. Their knowledge was substantial. I mean, they really appreciated basketball plays. And I said lastly, but I do think also playing at Auburn was really neat because it was a hard sellout. I know there were people outside scalping tickets and pulling up an hour and a half before the game, and there's 1,000 people outside waiting to get in. Those were really neat experiences. I hope our kids remember that.
Yeah. And for you personally with Auburn, I mean, again, having been from the state of Alabama and having spent so much of your time there, I know there were a lot of friends down there too. So that had to make it maybe fun, maybe a little more pressure. I don't know, but
a little bit of both. And, in all those games too, it was really unique. We get off to good starts. We'd be hanging in about the 5-minute mark, 2 4-point game, and we just had a hard time getting the games to halftime. But then we'd come back out the second half and cut the lead down. But at the end of the day, we probably weren't ready for some of those games. But I do think I'm very convicted that it made us better at the end of the year. I think those experiences allowed us to go win at Jacksonville, at North Alabama, at North Florida. I think those were moments that we grew.
Well, so let's talk about that for a second, because if people followed the season this year, they know we played a lot of tough games early. You've just listed a bunch of them, and we had a few more that you didn't list. And so we get into conference play and have got, I think this year you might agree or disagree, but I felt like with the conference this year, there were one or two teams that probably went in as kind of the favorites for the year, and probably rightly so, just because of their experience and past success and whatever. And then after that, I feel like you could almost throw a hat over a lot of the rest of the schools, because in general, and you might talk about this a little bit, in general, I think the level of our the coaching in our conference has continued to go up. I think that means the recruiting has continued to improve. I think the teams are better. And so I thought, we go into the season, conference season, with probably Liberty and UNF being the rightful preseason favorites. And then after that, everybody was just kind of there together. So it was rocky to begin with, not necessarily unexpected. And then there was kind of a turning point, it feels like. And so maybe just talk about the conference, the quality of it, that sort of thing. And then maybe what you felt like was the difference that kind of flipped the switch.
Well, I completely agree with you. Liberty, North Florida were for sure, from game 1 to game 16, the best two teams in the league. I think that was pretty evident as we got started. You watched their scores, and when they were involved, there was some some little wider margins than most. But the other 7 teams, it was just a street fight every night. And we ended up on the wrong end of a few close games the first time through the league. We ended up, I think, 3-5, but lost 3 or 4 games right at the end that could have went either way. And so I did think my hope, and the thing, we talk a lot more about this, the thing I was so proud of our guys is we just kept coming back for more, and we stayed the course. But, actually the longer it went, the first time through we were able to beat North Florida. The second time through, we were able to beat Liberty, and then obviously beat North Florida again in the conference tournament. So with those two teams, we played them 6 times, and we went 3-3. And so I think we closed the gap the longer it went. But I thought 3 through 9, and Kennesaw is going to get a lot better. And I thought that Amir did a really good job with their team just to keep them playing hard. But they were probably the 9th team, and that's not being critical. It's just where they were. But I think 3 through 8 was absolutely a 2 to 3 point game every night you play. And that's where I felt like you had to continue to get better in late game situations. You had to get better at the little things to try to figure out one of those games. And I think it also lent itself to teams that really kept improving even through February. And a
Mhm.
lot of times in basketball, I think if you're having a tough season, like we were 7-13, a lot of times with lesser kids, lesser character, they quit practicing hard. They don't continue to make upward trajectory. But our guys did, and I'm really proud of them for that. Next thing you know, we win a 2-point game at North Alabama. Then we win a 2-point game at Jacksonville, and we're able to start winning some games that weren't going our way. And we played great against Liberty on Senior Day, and then that segued to a tough win against Gulf Coast, a tough win at North Florida. And so I think just being able to stay the course and have a consistent message was huge for us.
Yeah. So now we get to the end of the season. We're looking towards next season. Part of what you always hope for is when you get done with the season. Okay, now's the time to work on our game, to improve. There's probably some players and some things that you've just kind of done workarounds. There's people who have weaknesses in their game, or you have a weakness as a team that you're kind of work around it during the season. And now here you are in the off season. You want to work on that to get better for next year. And we have this situation come up. So, I mean, what kind of approach have you taken to it, knowing that everybody's sitting at home, or they're hopefully not sitting all the time, but they're at
Yeah,
home anyways?
great question. And we were really looking forward to the off season. I mean, we were going to take the mandatory 2 weeks off, which was going to work great. We would take a week off from our last game, and then we went into spring break. But that Monday we came back for spring break. We had a plan, and we're ready to execute that plan. And it was going to be really challenging and hopefully growth mindset for all of our guys. And we did have several guys that was going to be a key component for them going into next year, because I think when you get into basketball, really any sport, you usually say, okay, when you think about your team next year, the novice fan, they'll say, well, how many starters do we have back and who did we sign? Well, what I've always tried to take a lot of pride in is growing. I call them growing players through the weeds.
Mm-hmm.
Is like a kid that's here that maybe didn't get to play as much, and then next November he's a starter, or he's a really key contributor to our team. And I do. We talk about a lot. I say, you want to coach next year's team this year. Mm. If you want to have a real program, you say, okay, even though this young man may not be getting very many minutes right now, we've got to keep investing in him, because next year he has a chance to really help us. He has a chance to be somebody that we can plug in, and everybody in the Atlantic Sun goes, where did he come from? Well, he was here. He just got better. And I think so it has been disappointing. We meet with our team through Zoom once a week, every Wednesday. And, we try to say the same things I'm sure everybody else is doing. We got to stay at work. We got to stay in shape, and you have to be creative. And you and I have had this conversation. If there is a saving grace to all of it, though, it's the fact that everybody's in the same boat. Not one school in America has an advantage on the other. Right. It's all going to be what your commitment level is within your team, and the buy-in you have within your team. And can you have guys that are self-starters, and they're going to figure out a way to stay in shape and figure out a way wherever it is, if they have to go to their neighbor's driveway or whatever it is, to get up shots. And, we have been blessed. It's been pretty good weather in the South, and, you can get outside and make some progress. But I do think as we segue into the fall, I think you will see some teams that really advance or retreat or digress in their progress based upon what goes on for the last 6 weeks, and probably the next 6 to 8 weeks going forward.
Yeah, and then probably the thing is the coaches may be just as surprised as the fans one way or another, because they're not with the players right now either. So
and I really missed that part of it, because my thing was, I got here almost a year ago to the day, and I was really looking forward just to being able to spend more time with the guys, and just for it be a little bit more lax, as opposed to more individual workouts, more one-on-one time, and really getting to know them at a deeper level. I felt like we were on the right track there. And so now you're almost set back. But again, everyone's in the same boat. Everyone's swimming in the same streams. And so we just have to make sure that we stay positive. I think we need to talk to ourselves and not listen to ourselves. I love the analogy, staying young every day. We need to be doing something that helps us keep us challenged and keep us going and have a routine. But we are for sure in unprecedented times.
So maybe this is a good way to transition. I had several people who had questions about recruiting. I think for the average fan, that's one of the most interesting parts of any sport is college sports anyways, is the whole recruiting game. And they kind of know what they read and see, but, kind of wonder about some of maybe the behind the scenes. So I actually want to, again, kind of make the point that the players that we have now, you didn't recruit them to begin with. Now you had to re-recruit a lot of them
Right.
to get them. But kind of just, I guess, as a general question first, because this kind of came in different forms or fashions from a couple of people, just in a general sense, without giving away any secrets you don't want to give away, kind of walk through the recruiting process that as a staff you guys go through. So, when does that start with a young person? How do you go about? You've got every person in America. If you're like me, I mean, I get people email me, text me, Twitter, direct message me, somebody from another state who's interested in playing for Lipscomb or whatever. So just in the biggest, broadest sense, how do you get started with the top of the funnel and then kind of talk about how you start narrowing down till we finally get to, like this year, for instance, we've got 2 recruits we might talk about in a minute that we finally ended up with. But talk about that whole process a little. I think people are interested.
It is a long process, and obviously this pandemic and basically shutdown of our whole industry is going to affect that going forward. I tell people when they ask me, when they have children that are getting ready to go into the process, I say, probably the summer before your 10th grade years where you can start somewhat getting on radars. That would be their 15 and under year. You start hearing about a kid, through your contacts. And before I really get into that, I think it's important that I talk about our staff. I think when you talk about recruiting, those guys are the engine that drives the car. I have really, really been blessed with 4 outstanding young people that are with me, not necessarily young. Roger's about my age, and Kevin's getting on up there, but Tyler's a little younger than Daniel. But Roger Eastrom has been with the program for 8 years now, and Roger has been a huge asset and has a great understanding of Lipscomb. He really has been a huge help to me through the entire process, and he's been doing it 20-something years at the Division I level. Kevin Carroll was someone I coached and worked for me, and then Kevin did it at a really high level at Air Force. He's been an assistant at VMI, has been a head coach. And then Tyler Murray is our recruiting coordinator, and Tyler has been at Furman, been at Charleston Southern, and is a really outstanding recruiter. So try to take all the contacts we have and all the names that they accumulate, like you say, through emails, and you'll get an email and you say, hey, that kid, this looks like one of our guys. You may start looking at a kid as a 10th grader, and you watch his video and you're like, that could be a Bison. And that's what we want. We want to get to where when coaches have certain kids that play a certain way or in a certain faith-based young man or a student, we say, we want them to think we need to contact Lipscomb. That looks like a Lipscomb player. And so as a 10th grader, you're starting to get on the radar. As a junior, it becomes a little bit more serious. We'll probably make a little bit more concerted effort to seed them than you would at Division II. At Division II, you're more just dealing with guys that are rising seniors. You're kind of wasting your time other than just knowing where juniors are. But we really try to start evaluating juniors really closely. And I think we're really in a good shape with the 2021 class. And I'm glad we did it because we're not going to get a ton of evaluation this spring or summer, it doesn't look like. But then going into that senior summer, that's when you have to probably be down. I try to think relative to the number of scholarships times 5. If we have 5 scholarships, 25 kids, which we obviously we only had 2, and we probably actively recruited 10 kids. And then once you say you get down to those 10 kids, probably saying start prioritizing A, B, C, D, and E. And this is how we see them, understanding that there's factors that may be in your favor or against you that cause them to move up or down that food chain. And then, ultimately, usually in the spring of their senior year, offering them and saying, we'd like for you to be a part of our team, and we're extending you an offer. Now, I'm a little different. I don't believe in offering more scholarships than you have. I do believe in telling two kids we like you both, and the first one that tells us you're coming is who we're going to take. And but so that's how the process kind of works, and it's an inexact science. But I really feel good about our recruiting year. I feel really proud of our staff. I think they've done a great job of guiding me, and I think we've really landed some good players.
Yeah, I want to talk about those two guys here. Well, let's go ahead and talk about the two that we've got coming in this year. We've got Tommy Murr from Alabama and Will Pruitt from Tennessee. People may have already seen that in some of the releases we've done, but there may be some people watching or listening that aren't familiar with those two guys yet. So maybe give us a little bit of a thumbnail on what about them made them a good fit for Lipscomb.
Sure. Well, if I could, I'd like to regress a little bit and maybe talk about another element of recruiting as we segue into Tommy and Will, is that with our team this year, I know a lot of people followed our team closely and really keep up with the Bisons, is that, we had two red shirts, Luke Howard and Tanner Schulman, and then we had two young men, Jake Wolf and Alex Jones, that were injured and were out for the year. They were going to be medical red shirts. So when you think about the team we put on the floor at Liberty in March for the championship game, we're going to have those four guys are going to be new. Yeah. So they're recruits, basically.
Yeah, good point.
So you say, okay, there's four right there. Okay. And, Luke Howard's a red shirt that can really shoot the basketball as a big kid, and we think he has a high ceiling. Alex was playing well before he got hurt, and we think Alex really can help our team. Jake Wolf was playing as many minutes as anybody on our team. I mean, just really affects the game on both sides of the floor. We'll get him back. And Tanner Schulman had a really good red shirt year. He may be one of the better 2 or 3 shooters in our program. He is one of the better two or three shooters in our program. So that's your jumping on point, right? Those four guys. Mm-hmm. And then we segued into Tommy Murr and Will Pruitt. Alex was really the only true point guard we had in the program this year. Miles Miller can play the point, and he's more of a combo. And Buck did a great job for us all year playing the point, but that was not his natural position. I would like to talk about he and Andrew and John Matt at some point. But so we felt like I would like to always have 3 point guards in the program, 3 true point guards. I've had some really good teams. I've had some teams that aren't as good, but I've never had a good team with bad guards. Mm-hmm. And I just think it all starts there. Tommy Murr is somebody I think everybody that keeps up with Lipscomb basketball is going to really enjoy watching. He had as storied a high school career as any kid that's ever gone through Alabama. Literally, he's the all-time leading scorer in the history of high school basketball in the state of Alabama. He led the country in scoring again this year, over 44 points a game. And that is great, and that's awesome. But I think, and he and I have talked a lot, is like his best quality is he can make the guys around him better. His role on his high school team, he had to do that for them to be competitive. In college, he's a point guard. He has great vision, really, really sees the floor. The thing that may separate him from most kids I've seen is his quickness and burst, which I call fast twitch. He is a fast twitch kid. I mean, he really has a next gear that he can go from 0 to 60 really quick. And he loves to play. I mean, he texts me all the time. Hey, coach, got up 600 shots today. He is a basketball gym rat, and I'm excited about him. We're equally excited about Will Pruitt. For the folks in the Nashville area that got to see him play this year, he plays for a Lipscomb Academy guy who played at Lipscomb, Troy Allen, and Troy did a great job with their team, and he is a winner. I am so excited about Will. From the day we started talking to him, I just gravitated to him. Just the young man he was, his substance, and that was transparent in their team this year that was number 1 or 2 in the state most of the year. He was runner-up for Mr. Basketball in the highest classification in the state of Tennessee. And we think we can play those two guys together. We think they'll both have times that they'll be out there at the same time. And we're really excited about both those guys. We have one scholarship now. And we feel real good about where we are with that, with a commitment that, we can't really publicize yet, but we think that we're trending in the right direction there. And so if you look at it in totality, once we add one more player, we'll have 15 guys back, and 7 of them will be, in essence, new to our team, even though they may not be new to our program.
Yeah, that's a lot. Well, talk a little bit about Buck and Fleming and John Matt. So you, as you said, you inherit a team that's had a lot of success. You've got a few guys who are going to be seniors this year: Michael Buckland, Andrew Fleming, John Matt Merritt. All three played their last season for us, and I don't know, maybe just reflect on those guys a little bit, and especially as a coach who's come in and now, transitioning to whatever degree you're doing that. Just think about them for a second, and what about those guys? What did they do for the program in your mind that really
Yeah,
helps it keep advancing?
I'm really thankful for all three of those young men. John Matt Merritt is one of the nicest quality young men I've ever been around in 30 years. His parents have done an amazing job with him, great family. And John Matt did not get to play a lot for us this year, and I understand that, but his value to us was substantial. Um, great teammate, young man of the highest character. Came to practice every day to try to make everyone around them better. I think we would really be remiss if we don't understand the value he brought to our team and our program for the last 4 years. I'm really thankful for John Matt and excited about what God's got in store for him going forward. I met Buck, the first day I got here. He was the lone starter returning from the team. And I will forever be indebted to Michael Buckland for his loyalty to Lipscomb, his love for Lipscomb, and the bridge that those three guys have been from the past to the present. It would have been real easy for him to transfer, real easy for him to say, well, everybody's gone and I'm leaving. But he told me, he said, I don't really know you, but I love Lipscomb. And I want to continue to be here. I want to graduate from here, and I want to help keep our program in an upward trajectory. And and like I told him after the last game, I'd heard from the day I got here that it was a deal that, well, Buck's a role player, he's this and all that. Michael Buckland's a really good player. I was disappointed he didn't make all conference. I felt like he should have. And he had a great year for us, averaged double figures, shot almost 50% from the floor, over 40 from three, and did all that playing out of position. And then also guarded as good. Whoever you need to guard, I'll guard him. He could guard 1 through 4, and he's just a winner. We're really going to miss Buck, and not just in basketball, but our campus is going to miss Buck. He is a Lipscomb kid, and he's got a great future, and I'm just a good player and a great young man. Andrew Fleming, I will tell this in all the sincerity I can. He's probably as unique a kid as I've ever coached. And I mean that in a good way. I don't know if I've ever been as proud of anyone or as happy for anyone the way they finished their senior year. Flem has had an up and down career, transferred a couple of times, and had probably, and to his words to say, had a disappointing, at times 3 years in college. But if you look at his numbers this year, he was a huge cog for us. And one of the biggest reasons we turned it around was his quality of play. He led us in scoring against Liberty at home in the game we beat them. There's no way we beat North Florida. He was fantastic. And to see him go and being able to make that last shot to beat them in the conference semifinals, and he played great against Liberty in the finals. He had 6, I think. And just to see him finish on a high water mark, and for him to be able to walk off that floor with a good taste in his mouth, and I'm really proud of Andrew and happy for him.
Yeah, Michael Buckland now. Buck put me up to this, but he posted on Twitter. He wanted to know what your funniest story would be in the chapter of your the Andrew Fleming book. So I don't know if you have one. I've actually got one, but I don't know if you do.
Well, a little background on that.
That's a Buckland question, by the way.
Yeah, I know that there's a little background on that. I always tell my wife and my kids, I'm going to write a book one day. And I tell the players every year, I'm going to write a book when I'm all done with this. And I told Fleming about halfway through the year, I just want you to know, Andrew, there will be a chapter about Andrew Fleming. He moved into that rarefied air that he is going to get his own chapter. He will not get a paragraph or a subplot. It will be his own chapter. And
Awesome.
honestly, I probably could tell you a lot of stories that I don't really want to get into, but I will say, to see in a very positive way his teammates so happy for him that night in
Right.
Jacksonville when he
That's right.
played so well to beat North Florida, and to get to see him hug his dad when it was
Yeah.
over.
Yeah.
That's just a special thing, and
Hmm.
you really appreciate those kind of times when there's been bumps in the road, and just to see him experience that, and and all the guys like Andrew. There's times he drove them crazy, like he drove me crazy, but everybody likes Andrew,
Yeah. Yeah.
and to see them really be as excited for him as he was. And I told him after the game, I said the chapter of his book is going to be The Night Fleming Broke Bad in Jacksonville. And so that's going to be his title, because that's the way I'll remember it. Yeah, there were some bumps in the road, but Andrew has a great heart.
Yeah, that's great. Well, my wife, he's got a special place in my wife's heart because she needed help moving a couch at one time, and had asked, just kind of put a general call out for somebody to help move it. And he was actually the first one that responded to our washer and dryer, not a couch, but in any event, so he had a special place in her heart for that, I
I'm
think.
not
And
surprised.
yeah,
Not
so
surprised.
well, um, I guess one other question about recruiting, then move on to some other things, and maybe kind of come around the home stretch a little bit on this. But had one or two people ask it, and you referenced it a little bit earlier, but you didn't go down that path. Again, knowing your background from D2, and frankly having uh, a lot of D2 players at UAH that were good enough to play at a lot of D1 programs, at least one that's gone on to the NBA. So, I mean, maybe just reflect a little bit on the differences in the recruiting process, or the way you go about recruiting, or the kind of players you're looking at, just the differences between what you've been doing recruiting, and maybe the similarities for that matter, just between where you were and where you are now.
Really, really good question, and one I've given a lot of thought. We had, and quite honestly, we had gotten to the point at Huntsville with our program, and again now, 22 years. This was not the case year one, and it really wasn't the case probably year 1 through 15. It takes time, but our whole goal was we wanted to be their best option below Division One. Because the
Okay.
reality was 99% of the kids, if they get a Division One offer, you weren't going to get them in Division Two. That's just the way you were going to land, and that's okay. But we really tried hard to make sure our program in its totality, culture, resources, facilities, game day environment, experience playing there, said if I don't get a Division One offer, I want to go to Huntsville. And we had pretty much, in all honesty, gotten to that point. We could track kids that were right on that D1, D2 line, and if they didn't get an offer, we were probably going to get them if they were our kind of kid. Um, the difference is now you're recruiting at a level everybody wants to play at. Okay. So, for instance, you go watch a kid and you really like him, and you're going to run into 7 or 8 schools almost identical to Lipscomb at the same level that want him as well, where you're just trying to get a visit. I mean, you're just hoping you can do a good enough job in your initial interaction with him that you had it built, kind of got a jump start on this thing, and as when they were 10th or 11th graders, that you can get a visit and that you can kind of rise to the top of that 6 or 7 schools. And so that for us was probably the biggest difference is, and we want to get our program to that point where, hey, if he doesn't get a Power 5 offer, I'm really going to consider Lipscomb. That is a great place, and that's why we have to keep improving. We have to keep moving the needle, and that's something I thought we did a good job collectively with our administration and our community at Huntsville. We just kept kicking the can a little further down the road every year, and you just create an environment where you feel pretty good going against most people at your level, and I hope we can do that. But it's obviously much more competitive at this level just to try to get good players.
Yeah, yeah. Talk about maybe one question about just about scheduling, and then just maybe a bit more just kind of professional, personal type stuff, maybe to wrap it up. But so as I said earlier, you inherited the schedule from last year. We played a tough one. We're trying to put together a schedule this year. Obviously, there's probably a few different things that make that challenging right now, but maybe just talk about the process. You don't necessarily have to get into particulars yet, but just kind of the process of trying to schedule with the team that Lipscomb has coming back, and the uncertainty that we have going on right now. Just talk about what's easy or difficult about it right now.
Well, that has been a full-time job almost. That's what we spend is we have one scholarship, and we spent a lot of time in the last 6 weeks trying to get that right. And then the other thing has been scheduling. Those two things have taken up the majority of our interaction as a staff. In Division I, we can play 29 regular season games, or we can play 28 games and play in an MTE, a multiple team event, which is basically a small tournament in essence. Mm-hmm. And you do that, you can play 28-3 in that event. So if you think about our schedule, next year Bellarmine's coming into our league. So our league will go from 16 to 18 games. All right. We're playing Belmont twice, which, that's an awesome 2 games. That's obviously a big rivalry and something a lot of the people take interest in at Lipscomb and in Belmont. So that gets us to 20. We have Navy that will return the game to us this year at our place. We have Tennessee State that will return the game to us to get us to 22. We will play 2 non-Division I's at ideal situations, for us as far as in exams or whatever.
And you're gonna make our sports information guys nervous if you start giving out too many more names. So you can just be gentle from here on in.
Yeah, no, those are all have been known forever.
No, I agree.
I'm not giving out names of anything else, but we'll play 2 non-1s. And so then the last 7 is where you have to be creative.
Right.
And so that's what we're trying to do. I won't ruin their day, but we already have one SEC school scheduled and contracted for next year. We're on the cusp of signing a contract for an MTE that I think will be good, 3 competitive games. And then there's a couple of schools we're still talking about trying to get home and homes. Now, it is interesting, even though we lost a ton from, the NCAA tournament team 2 years ago, the NIT team a year removed. But I will tell you, Lipscomb has a strong tradition in basketball. And it's not as easy as I thought it would be to schedule. We've gotten some pushback that I didn't think we would get. Now, some of that is the tradition and the success of the past. The other thing is if you go and look at our stats from this year, we obviously returned the best player in the league in Asana Sajala. And that is a great thing. And his year was amazing. But you look at that, well, our second leading scorer was KJ Johnson, who's a freshman. So that's a freshman and a sophomore. And so a lot of times they'll just glance at that and say, oh, they finished 3rd in the league. They got the championship game. They got their 2 leading scorers back. We'll probably take a pass on that. So it's not just as easy as picking up the phone and say, hey, you want us to come play you at Ohio State or where, I haven't called Ohio State, but just as an example.
Right.
It's just whatever school you choose and you say, well, I'd like to, could we get a game going or whatever. But we want to make sure we play a competitive schedule. As we sit here today, we'll have 15 home games. And that we want to have as many home games as we can, understanding that there's going to be ebb and flow to that as we have to work through various scheduling scenarios.
Yeah. And Hassan, just for our fans out there, I think anybody who followed Lipscomb basketball knows how good he was this year. I thought the most impressive or telling stat I saw was one that Kirk Downs pointed out to me, our head of athletic communications, that since I think it's 92, 93, or maybe the late 90s. Anyways, in about the last 20 years, there's only been 2 players who have had 18 plus points, 10 plus rebounds, close to 4 assists a game, and whatever else he had. Only 2 in all of NCAA history in the past 20 years. Ben Simmons at LSU, who's now with the 76ers, a lottery pick, and Asana Sajala, which I think tells you all you need to know.
Yeah. And I really thank Kurt for doing the research on that. That was a great exercise for sure. Yeah. And it was since 1992, so 28 years, and Ben Simmons was the number 1 pick in the draft.
Yeah, incredible.
So he's kind of rarefied air there, and we're really excited about, what he's going to do the next 2 years.
Yeah, and I imagine we have some coaches and people who want to be coaches or people who love basketball. And so I wanted to maybe just hit you with a few kind of professional-ish questions, and then maybe just a couple just kind of get to know you, and then we'll be done. So Somebody asked what's some advice you would offer someone wanting to get into coaching? So maybe you're not in it yet, or you're a young coach just getting started, but you've been doing it for a little while. What's some advice you'd offer to somebody who wants to get into coaching?
Well, if you're going to get into college coaching, for sure, you've got to be willing to make a lot of financial sacrifices. You got to be willing to say, I don't think it was Coach Myers' word was all you got to be willing to go, suck scum or something. He would say,
that sounds like him.
Yeah. But I think that's a little extreme. But I do think you need to be willing to say, hey, I'm willing to take it on the chin for a little while, and I'm willing to do whatever I have to do to get in. If that means work for free, if that means move 500 miles away from my home, if that means live in the dorm, that means live in the head coach's basement. Whatever you have to do, I think you need to be willing to say, I raise my hand and say, I'll do it. And then once you get into it, I think you have to create a niche. You need to be somebody that brings something a little different to the table. What's going to make you different? It's a little bit like recruiting a player. You go watch kids and you'll see 1,000 kids at an AU tournament. What you're looking for is that one guy that there's just something about him that separates him. Mm-hmm. And it's the same way in coaching. It's really competitive. And, like every profession, there's some politics to it. So, and don't know. But there's a lot of people that have paved their own path. Mm-hmm. And it's because they're willing to jump in and say, whatever job is needed, no job too big, no job too small. And I just want to coach. And then when you get that opportunity, make the most of it by really being good at what you do. And, going into it with a humble heart, if you big egos have small ears. And just having the ability to say, I'm here to learn. I'm not a know-it-all. I want to be a learn-it-all.
That's a good one. I hadn't heard learn it all. But so have there been any particular people, coaches, could be basketball, could be other sports, could be just teachers or whomever, that have had a particular, help shape your coaching life and coaching philosophy?
Yeah, as you get older, things change a little bit. But honestly, the first guy was my dad. I played for my dad in a lot of youth sports, and I thought he was fantastic. He had amazing feel. He showed me what it was like because we practiced more than most teams, and we could be better. He worked swing shift, and we would practice at 3 p.m, and he'd pick us up from school, and he'd get the whole team, and we'd go practice. And seeing, wow, if you work harder than everybody else, that kind of works out to your advantage. And then my high school coach, I played for Danny Petty, who was one of the all-time great high school coaches in the state of Alabama. And he was actually my coach from the 7th grade to the 12th grade. And I saw how much he loved the game and how hard he worked at it. And then my college coach was he passed away this past fall. I spoke at his funeral, and just his passion. And he took a really, really tough situation, but was a great coach. And then I think probably learning from afar. Just watching other guys that really are good at it. The first guy that gave me my first job was a guy named Tony Engel, that won 2 national championships, coached in the A-Sun for a little bit. I think.
Kennesaw State.
Yeah, and won a national championship at Kennesaw in Division II and Dalton State NAIA. And just his investment in me, I learned more about the business in the 1 year I worked for him than any other year. The other thing, kind of going back to getting into it, is I'm glad he went to BYU after my first year with him. I'd have probably been out of the business because I'd have been dead, because I never knew you could work that hard. We never went home. But that was a great education for me. Like, if you think this is something you want to do, this is what it takes. And I learned a ton from him. So probably those 4.
What do you think, if you would advise other coaches, you may not choose to answer it, I guess, but, you advise other coaches to have something that makes them stand out from the other 1,000. What do you think it was for you? What do you think that was for you?
I don't know. I think, all of us that are involved with Lipscomb basketball, obviously from you being our athletic director, Don Meyer just affected so many people in the way they see things. Many staff meetings, you referenced some things he said as previous last Friday on the Zoom call. You started with something that, being able to adapt and things that, and I know that's a Navy SEAL motto, but just things he continuously talked about. I tried to study him, and I just think you have to have a niche. Right. And I think if we've done anything good, bad, or in between, I've really tried to, I don't know, I don't want to say be self-serving, but maybe try to be a little different offensively, try to have a unique fun style of play.
Yeah.
Maybe swim upstream. My comment a lot is be a curveball and a fastball lead. Don't try to do what everybody else does. Do what's best for us, and maybe try to find your niche there and get a bunch of guys that want to play that way.
Right.
And I guess that for me, that's how I see the game.
Yeah.
I do think that there's a lot of guys that are more maybe slanted towards the offensive side that people don't think do much defensively. But I think our teams have been much better defensively than we get credit for. I thought our team this year really grew defensively.
Yeah.
And we're putting a lot of time into it and trying to get better. But I think you probably need something that will maybe resonate as, hey, this is my calling card.
Yeah.
And this is something that maybe I can be a little different in and have a niche.
I think that's what helps you with recruiting too. I know we've talked about this before, but you said when you walk into a gym or see 20 courts at a big sportsplex type place, and you're trying to figure out, well, where's that one or two the people that I need. I've always said that if I came back from one of those events and I said to you, hey, that guy was a Lipscomb type player, or I might say a Virginia type player. Or, I think there's just different programs that, back in the early 90s, if I'd have said UNLV, you'd have known exactly what I meant in terms of the up and down style of play and, that sort of thing. And so I do think that ability to define who you are and who your program is and know that, like, hey, there's different ways to skin a cat. Jim Boeheim has been successful for a lot of years playing 2-3 zone at Syracuse, and then you've got others who, Huggy Bear would Bob Huggins would press you up and down all game, and so two totally different kinds of styles. But I think that's really, really one of the keys, and not just for fans, but also for your coaching staff and recruiting. I think being able to define who you are is really important.
It is, and fit. I mean, who fits us, and who are the guys that maybe see the game the way I see it.
Right.
That when I watch them play, I'm like, that's a fit. That's a Lipscomb guy, and I think that's important for us. And I see the game from a lens of skill. Mm-hmm. I want guys that skill. That's what makes Hassan so different from most 6'8", 6'9" back to the basket guys. His skill level's through the roof. Mm-hmm. And after one workout with him, I'm like, oh my goodness, boy, we got one here. And not because he was agile and mobile at that size, but just his vision and ability to pass, or they're outlier. And so that's what you're looking for. I think you're always trying to find outliers. And that's for me would be what we're looking for.
So one more sports related question, then just a couple of kind of personal ones, I suppose, just that will be, easy 5 and 5 type things or something. Yep. But so this is actually from one of our own coaches, Brandon Rosenthal, volleyball coach, has had tremendous success in volleyball, and we'll have him on at a later date. So just a reminder, we'll be doing this every week on Wednesdays. And Coach Acuff here, Lennie's our first one, but we'll be doing it every Wednesday. And you can send questions into athletics@lipscomb.edu or direct message us at Lipscomb Bisons on any of our social media feeds to feed us these questions. Most every question I've asked you has been something somebody else asked. So it's been really easy for me, and hopefully for people who enjoy sports. This is a little break from, the reruns of axe throwing or whatever we're trying to watch right now just to get our fix. But Brandon wondered, was there anything this year, Leslie, maybe you've already said it, so but if so, we'll just move on. But is there anything lesson-wise this year, just personally, as a basketball coach, as a coach of sports, or a person who works with young people, anything you learned this year or really resonated with you this year that you felt like I hadn't learned that before, or this is something new? This is something I've added to my toolbox this year that I didn't have in it before.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I'm glad you brought up, start with Brandon, the other coaches. We have such a neat thing at Lipscomb with the quality of people that serve on our coaching staff and our support staff. And some of those, and Brandon being one of those guys, has really been encouraging when things were hard. I share this with our players a lot. I said, never take criticism from someone you wouldn't take advice from. Mm-hmm. And so I really tried to seek out, okay, what about this? And tried to get caught up on the landscape of what is Lipscomb about. And those guys have been great. And honestly, watching Brandon see, success, and not just his success with his volleyball program, sustained success.
Right.
That to me is the greatest challenge, is being able to do it year in and year out. That is your ultimate test as a coach. But you know what? I think probably, Hutch, the thing I learned is I still believe in the tenets that win basketball games.
Yeah.
I think at the end of I felt like I relearned it.
Yeah.
Like, we don't have to split the atom here. We need to get better shots than who we're playing.
Right.
We need to have a culture of togetherness, of oneness, of one mission.
Right.
And then we need to fight like crazy to get to it.
Yeah.
I think that probably that being re-emphasized to me, just the nights we did that, we usually had success. And when we didn't, it usually didn't work out in our favor. And I think sometimes you want to, as you move up to maybe a different level, now the players are bigger and stronger and faster. They are. And there's no doubt about that. And probably getting good shots is harder.
Right.
But at the end of the day, if I watch Brandon play volleyball, it doesn't matter if he's playing against UCLA or Nebraska or whoever. They got to be able to receive, serve, pass, and spike, hit, whatever they call it. For us, we got to be able. We need to guard every possession. We need to rebound both ends. We got to value the ball. And we got to get good shots for our good players.
Yeah.
And if we do those 4 things, we got a chance.
Like you said, not splitting the atom, but easier said than done. Well, so, all right. Well, a couple last things then. You've been in Nashville for about a year. Any favorite places to eat right now that you have? Unsolicited endorsements here?
I think probably our 3 places are, we love Edley's. Who doesn't love Edley's?
Sure.
Tell me my taco place. I'm sorry.
Taqueria del Sol on 12 South.
Yeah. That is both those. When your car starts going that way, just land in one of those parking lots and you're in good shape.
Yeah.
We've had several breakfasts at what's that place?
First Watch.
First Watch, love First Watch, and kind of Kelly and my place just to go watch sports is the Crow's Nest over by Kroger's.
Yeah.
And running some Lipscomb folks over there, and that we enjoy that for football or whatever. So those are we don't venture too far out of Green Hills. We're kind of novice in the Nashville community as far as where to go and where not to go.
Well, so I asked all the coaches the other day and staff members on our Zoom call last Friday to change their name from what shows up on the screen to what show they've been watching. Everybody's had extra time to be watching something on, streaming video or whatever. Any particular shows or movies that you and Kelly have gotten into at all?
I have watched Ozarks. I watched that all the way through, which that's quite interesting. I'm not big on dark movies, so some of the Netflix stuff I don't really go down that road. But one thing I have gotten into, and I've heard many, many, many things about, was Breaking Bad, and everybody said that was a good show.
It's modern day Shakespeare.
And so I will say this: like, I didn't realize it. I thought most of those shows were like 2 seasons. She told me the night's like 7. So we're still we're kind of got our toe in that water. We're not 100% in, but I will say this: I have watched a ton of Andy Griffin because I just want to feel good.
Right.
I like Andy Griffin. And I like King of Queens. I've watched a lot of King of Queens because I like to laugh. So I like to get into some moral compass with Andy, and then also a few laughs with King of Queens.
Yeah, sounds great. Well, look, we may be able to do a round 2 sometime if we get back around to it. I have plenty more questions than we had time, and hopefully for people who followed Lipscomb basketball this year, they got a little bit more of a total feel for how the season went, and maybe got a little bit excited about what's coming up here. Certainly don't know what the future holds, but we obviously hope that everybody stays well, and as soon as we can find a vaccine cure and get back to business here. And but really appreciate you spending the time just visiting and sharing some of your thoughts. And again, I would encourage anybody that's interested to share this with others. If there's anything that we could do to make this better. I'm sure, as I say, where I attend church, or anybody who goes to any kind of place that's a big gathering, you can't get 10 people on the same pew to agree on the temperature in the auditorium. So, I'm sure some will think this should be longer, some shorter, whatever, but I think it's been a great time spent. So be sure to watch it, listen to it, share it with others. And Coach, we really appreciate you taking the time I know I'll be talking to you frequently, but on behalf of everybody else, just thanks for all you've done. And
Well,
Kelly too, it's a team effort, that's for sure. So,
it is. And
thanks to
Hutch,
her.
Kelly and I and my children, Will and Molly, we're so thankful to be at Lipscomb. It's really a
Yeah.
special place with special people, and we're excited about the future. And we understand that, the tail doesn't wag the dog at Lipscomb. There's a lot more important things than our basketball team, but we want to be a great representative of our school and the institution of what it stands for. And we're extremely thankful to be here and can't wait till we get back together.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much, and y'all stay safe and go Bisons.
Okay, thank you. Go Bisons.